So nowadays, when we hear the phrase high maintenance, our minds seem to automatically picture some self-absorbed woman, and that is because there has been a lot of backlash regarding the term or the phrase being high maintenance, which we'll break that down here in a little bit. Everything we've been taught about being high maintenance centers around excessive self-focus, appearance, attention, indulgence. We've seen the endless routines, the over-optimization of beauty, all in the name of being that kind of woman. And to be clear, some of these principles do actually work. Those generally accepted principles of being high maintenance have helped a lot of women, including myself, elevate their appearance, prioritize themselves, help them develop deeper relationships with themselves when it comes to personal self-care. But being high maintenance is broader than what we've been taught to believe, and that is where perspective comes in. I'm high maintenance girl, and I actually want you to become high maintenance as well, just not in the ways that we have been conditioned to believe. We don't require constant attention. We don't demand excess, and we don't need to be indulged either, because we are becoming what I like to call selectively high maintenance, specifically when it comes to our minds, our boundaries, our limits, our time, our energy, our inner dialogue, our attention. These are the areas that we are going to become highly selective. As always, girl, the video chapters are on the screen. You can save those for later or skip ahead right now, whichever is your choice. But let's go ahead and get into a conversation of what it means to be a selectively high maintenance woman and why it is actually going to help your deeper glow up down the line. Now, you tell me if you've noticed it as well, but I feel like there has been a very noticeable shift, especially over the last several years, in how we talk about being a high maintenance woman. When the conversation surrounding being a high maintenance woman really gained momentum, I truly believe the intentions were pure. It was women teaching other women how to increase their internal value. It was women teaching other women how to advocate for themselves. Women finally learning how to care for themselves emotionally, sometimes for the very first time in their life. I remember watching some of the earliest conversations centered around being high maintenance years ago, genuinely feeling inspired, feeling completely inspired to shift how I presented myself, being encouraged to express my wants and my needs to my husband, my family, my friends, especially when these wants and needs were reasonable and they were rooted in my newfound self-respect. But somewhere along the way, the conversation shifted. There seems to be a whole lot of negativity nowadays around the idea of being high maintenance. It seems like when we hear the words high maintenance now, it's like, oh, that's a woman that wants too much. She needs way too much. She expects for the world to bend around her. I also feel like there is far more backlash now, because when we see a video about being high maintenance, usually it's about physical maintenance, your physical upkeep. And we see a lot of women spending significant amounts of money on that physical upkeep. I mean, but come on, honestly, who are we to dictate how another woman chooses to spend her money? The only reason all this extra commentary exists anyway is because we actually see these women living their lives. If we did not have YouTube shorts, reels, or TikToks, we wouldn't have that accessibility, which means that we wouldn't be able to comment on what she spends her money on. We're watching fragments, not context. And because of that, I feel like that is why the meaning of being high maintenance has become so distorted. So let's do this. Let's smooth out the distortion by shifting the perspective. Literally everything that we do starts as a thought. Every impulse we have, it starts as a thought. So maybe you're like me. Maybe you clicked on some of those earlier high maintenance conversations. Ask yourself just for a second. Pause and ask yourself, what made you click it? What thought was moving through your head that made you curious about becoming a high maintenance woman? Here's the thing about it. Women are not clicking these types of videos because they intentionally want to become vain. Like, honestly, that's not happening. They're clicking these types of videos because they want to change. They're seeking more self-respect. They're seeking more structure. They want intention. They want ownership over their lives. That is what draws them to that term, high maintenance. And if you ask me, that's the part that matters. There's always a deeper meaning that we can pull to the surface. So let's do this. Instead of defining high maintenance through vanity or excess, let's shift the entire perspective and tie it to something more foundational and grounded. I'm talking about governing principles. Real transformation doesn't start with appearance. It starts with a mental shift. We know that much. When that mental shift happens though, a woman naturally becomes more selective. Selective with her time, selective with her energy, maybe selective with what she tolerates, and selective with what she allows access into her inner world. So essentially, we have taken high maintenance from being this super negative concept to being deeply selective about the principles that govern our life. Let's pause here for a second, because this part actually really matters. Being selectively high maintenance means you are deeply selective about the principles that govern your life. In other words, you're no longer outsourced, you're self-governed. And if your desire is to walk in confidence, own your identity, and genuinely transform your life, self-governance is not optional. It is required. Being self-governed means you are done allowing other people's expectations to dictate your decisions. You're done allowing comfort to override your values or for the people pleasing to masquerade as kindness. Honestly, you just get to a point where you stop filtering your life through what is acceptable, what's expected, or what's familiar, and you just start simply filtering it through what's aligned. Truth is, no one will ever understand the full scope of the woman that you're becoming, and quite honestly, they're not supposed to. That's why these are your governing principles and not theirs. So when the way you move doesn't make sense to the outside world, keep moving anyway, because being selectively high maintenance, it is not about being understood, it is about being anchored. And once you're finally anchored, your confidence stops being performative and it starts being completely unshakable. As I became more selectively high maintenance, I actually ended up realizing something very uncomfortable. I still had a people-pleasing problem. Like, I would literally feel guilty if I didn't show up fast enough, or I would feel guilty if I didn't carry somebody else's emotional weight. It's like the guilt was whispering in my ear, you're being a bad friend. You're being a bad daughter, you're being a bad sister. But here's what I had to learn. Empathy does not require self-abandonment. Here's what I discovered. I am allowed to care deeply without allowing somebody else's current crisis to dictate my capacity, my time, or my energy. I can be compassionate on my terms. Because here's the truth. The moment you allow other people's lives to constantly consume yours, you stop governing yourself. Selective high maintenance taught me this. Supporting others is very noble. I mean, quite honestly, it shows that you have a good heart, but not at the expense of sacrificing your own stability. And when you stop operating from guilt, your presence becomes extremely intentional and not obligatory. As you begin defining your governing principles, you will realize that there are going to be some things about you that need to be updated. Are we broken? Of course not. It's just that clarity exposes to us what is no longer serving us. Certain habits that you've had, certain patterns that you've kept over the years, certain stories that you've been telling yourself. For example, many of us think that we're good at time management. We say that we're optimizing, but in reality, we're overcommitting, we're underprotecting our time, and then we're slapping the name of productivity on top of it. Your governing principles force you to stop lying to yourself. They make you look at life honestly, not harshly, but just clearly, at which point boundaries become very well established. Did we all of a sudden become cold-hearted overnight? No, we just realize now what our assets are. I'm gonna have a little blush blindness for a second, but your mind, your time, your energy, these are all high value assets that require protection. And that right there is what being selectively high maintenance really means. It is now January, it's the new year, obviously, and many of us are fresh off from making our vision boards for 2026, our prayer boards, manifestation journals, whichever language you prefer. Now, there are a few of us who did not hit as many milestones that we wanted to for 2025. So naturally, we are entering this year with a quiet determination, if you will. We don't want this to just be another year. We want this to be the year where things really happen. But again, if we want 2026 to finally be different, we want this to be completely different from 2025 and all of the prior years that came before that, it's gonna have to start in the mind first. I want you to think of just one image that is either on your vision board or prayer board. Like I said, whichever one you may, but just one image. And if you don't have a vision board or a prayer board, that is okay. You can still do this same exercise by simply going to Pinterest and picking out an image. After you have that image selected, I want you to ask yourself, what one or two words come to mind when you look at this image? This is the image that is on my vision board right now. And two words that immediately come to mind when I look at this image is eloquence and elegance. But here's the thing, if I sit long enough with those 1 to 2 words, eventually they will expand into specific qualities that I actually want to refine within myself. Grace, poise, neatness, refinement, precision, softness, strength, clarity, intentionality, articulation. So really the question is, how do I become these qualities? You don't become refined by buying refinement. You don't become elegant by copying elegance. You don't become poised by performing poise. Like, what is that? You become those things by deciding what you will allow, what you will no longer tolerate, and how you will govern your inner world. This is where being selectively high maintenance comes in. Because how could I ever expect to embody more eloquence or elegance for that matter if I don't first decide what governs my time, my energy, my attention, my inner dialogue. A deeper glow up is not about adding more. It is about becoming more intentional. We know that. When you become selectively high maintenance, that glow up is definitely going to move inward first. And girl, I'm telling you, when it does, everything external begins to follow naturally, quietly, authentically. Prior to this, I can say that I knew my glow up was deeper. Like, I definitely felt the shift of my focus going inward. My physical glow up, didn't care about it anymore. Not to say that I didn't care, it just was not as urgent anymore. Of course, daily, I'm going to make sure that I look put together. I'm going to make sure that I am presenting myself in the best way, but it just did not take up as much mental capacity as it did before. It's not like the appearance stopped mattering. It just wasn't the center of focus anymore. Even though I knew that my glow up was deeper, I still didn't quite have all the language for it. Like, I couldn't clearly define what my inner glow up required of me. I most definitely felt the shift happening. I just didn't have a name for the structure that was supporting it. Like, yeah, we know we're evolving. We know we want more depth, more alignment, more peace. But without the clarity, the desire will stay abstract. It stays inspirational instead of transformational. I do believe that we all have the capability of having like that super epic inner glow up, the kind that is just so extremely profound that you cannot even recognize the person that you used to be. That kind of transformation that really just feels surreal. Like, you find yourself asking yourself, how did I even tolerate that? Or how did I think that that was normal behavior? But that kind of level of transformation, that does not happen by accident. It doesn't come from motivation alone. That kind of transformation, that only happens when you place extremely clear stipulations on your life. When you fully decide what gets access to you, what no longer does, what you will protect, and what you will no longer negotiate. That's where governing principles come in. They aren't restrictions, they are respect. Respect for your time, your energy, your nervous system, and for your future self. Once you start honoring those principles consistently, your inner world will reorganize itself. That's when the deeper glow up begins, and it is the difference between wanting to change and actually becoming someone new. I believe that all women should become selectively high maintenance. This is definitely not a principle that is specific to just one age group. However, I do believe that you must adopt this kind of thinking in your 30s. I've heard countless women and men, for that matter, speak about the 30s experience. And despite everyone having different backgrounds, different lives, different careers, there is one constant theme that emerges in every single conversation. And it's that your 30s are when you actually start living for you. Your 20s are for discovery. Like, you're actively learning who you desire to be while also shedding who you were taught to be. Okay, at this point, let me just line my lips real quick. You're deciding how you want to present yourself, and you're learning what independence actually feels like. And in that process, sometimes we can become a little performative. And it's not even because of social media. Like, literally, social media is a beast all on its own. But it's because there is this unspoken desire that we need to prove something. To say, look, I did it. I'm grown now. Aren't you proud of me? We're proving to parents, caregivers, family members, hell, sometimes even to our younger self that we made it. But by the time you reach your 30s, that need begins to dissolve. The desire to explain yourself, it starts to fade. The need for approval, it weakens. The urge to perform, it quietly disappears. And what replaces it is clarity. You no longer move for applause. You move for alignment. So that is why I highly suggest that you specifically become selectively high maintenance in your 30s. But again, I believe that all women should become selectively high maintenance. That is all that I have for you guys. I am so glad that you came to hang out with me. I literally have nowhere to go. I am not changing clothes. Yes, I'm going to end this video in my robe. And yeah, until next time, my loves.